sorry, Paul. This is all wrong.
What?
You'll have to do it over again. It's not worthy of you. Throw it all out, except for that part of naming the gravedigger after me. You can leave that in.
James Caan plays an author whose #1 fan doesn't like the way his new book turned out, so she changed him to his typewriter almost literally in Misery, a thriller based on the Stephen King bestseller. It's one of the new movies we're going to be reviewing this week, and we'll also have a special two-part report that asks the question, why are so many recent movies for children so scary and so depressing? What happened to the fun of going to movies for kids? I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is called Misery, and just as with his film Stand By Me, also based on a Stephen King book, director Rob Reiner brings a lot of humor to the screen, and that makes the psychological horror of this picture work so well. James Caan plays a successful novelist who has written a whole series of potboilers featuring a female character named Misery. When he has a car accident after writing his latest book at a rural getaway, he's saved by a strange woman who used to be a nurse and says she's his #1 fan.
Your shoulder was pretty badly dislocated. It was a little stubborn, but I finally popped it back in. What I'm most proud of is the work I did on those legs. You have a compound fracture of the tibia in both legs, and the fibula in the right leg is fractured too. You've got a lot of recovering to do, and I consider it an honor that you'll do it in my home.
That's actress Kathy Bates in a comically chilling performance as the fan. It turns out that she is keeping him captive in that bedroom, pretending the phones are not working. She doesn't like the new book he's written.
You dirty bird. How could you? Misery Chastain cannot be dead.
Annie, in 1871, women often died in childbirth. But her spirit is the important thing, and Misery's spirit is still alive.
I don't want her, Smith! I want her!
It seems the only person who can save James Caan is the town sheriff, a crusty sort nicely played by the always appealing Richard Farnsworth.
I figured that if I can't find Paul Sheldon, at least I can find out what he wrote about.
What do you expect to find? A story about a guy who drove his car off a cliff in a snowstorm?
Quite steadily, the tension is turned up in the house where James Caan is being held captive. He's managed to get out of his room for an exploratory look around the house, and that freaks out his fan.
Paul, do you know about the early days at the Kimberley diamond mine? Do you know what they did to the native workers who stole diamonds? Don't worry, they didn't kill them. That would be like junking a Mercedes just because it had a broken spring. No, if they caught them, they had to make sure they could go on working, but they also had to make sure they could never run away. The operation was called hobbling.
Annie, whatever you think I'm not doing, please don't do it.
Her matter-of-fact tone is really very good there, and that little cross that's around her neck all the time takes on an ironic, threatening quality. Director Rob Reiner does a very good job of mixing horror and humor here. His shooting style is crisp and clean. We remember the detail of individual shots, a bobby pin on the floor, an empty telephone, a smudge on a piece of typing paper. Barry Sonnenfeld, who also photographed the beautiful Miller's Crossing, he did the fine camera work here too. And Kathy Bates is equal to the juicy role she's been given to play. That's why Misery is the most enjoyable, if sometimes gruesome, entertainment.
Now, this is basically a movie with two people in it,
Right.
apart from the real nice supporting performances by people like Richard Farnsworth, and they're both good. And I think there was a trap here in that both of them could have easily overacted. He could have turned into some kind of a real suffering martyr, and she could have turned into some sort of avenging angel. And her sweetness and humor in the role is what kind of sells it in a way. It makes her even scarier.
Also, James Caan, who has been good but erratic in his career, plays the guy as at the top of his intelligence. He's smart. He's ticked off. You know, it's not done as the world's greatest novelist. He's a regular person. It's a very nice, even-keel performance on his part.
So often I think Stephen King's books often seem to be based on autobiographical things that he finds in his own life, and he must have gotten a lot of letters from fans who didn't like the way some of his books turned out, and this is his way of extending that a little further. Our next film is named Hidden Agenda, and this is the kind of film where you can't quite believe your eyes and ears even while you're watching it, because it's a thriller that's also an almost unbelievable political statement, naming names while making the most serious charges against members of the Thatcher government in Great Britain. The movie stars Brad Dourif as an American who works for an international group like Amnesty International, and he's in Northern Ireland to investigate charges of official misconduct by the British government, a cover-up of murder and treason.
I really don't think that this is something that I should get involved in, but I'll tell you what I can do. I can turn the tape over to whatever authorities you
that would be crazy. We must meet.
When the Dourif character is himself assassinated, there's an angry meeting between a British government investigator and a Belfast police official who knows a lot more than he's willing to tell.
It's classified. I can't accept that. Then put that in your report too. He heard the tape. He had the tape. That's why they murdered him.
There are some weak links in the plot, which involves an explosively controversial audio tape. The single copy of this tape is treated as priceless, but why couldn't 100 copies that have been made and mailed all over the world? Frances McDormand also stars in the movie as another American investigating the case. Here's one of the scenes that shocked me. The movie actually accuses the Thatcher government of conspiracy to sabotage the personal reputations of opposition politicians.
To enforce the rules of a police state is politics. Good guys like you cover it up so bad guys are safe. You're a puppet, and the men pulling the strings know it.
Hidden Agenda was directed by Ken Loach, who has been an outsider and a rebel in the British film establishment for a long time. And this is easily the most controversial political film out of Great Britain in years. It charges that the same government dirty tricks experts who were involved in illegal murders and espionage in Northern Ireland were also involved in spreading rumors and lies about the opponents of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, both in her own party and in the opposition party. The debate about the movie's charges is still continuing, but what a thriller this is. Tightly wound, well acted, and passionate.
I think that the character who makes it all go is that Brian Cox who we saw at the end. He seems like a guy in a documentary, a very natural performance. He's nervous, he wants to do the right thing, scared. He is, I think, the glue that holds the story together. I did have a problem with the basic law you found, which is that there is this one tape. It obviously could be easily disseminated, and in this day and age, someone, more than someone, people would be competing to print that kind of a story.
Hitchcock would have called that tape the MacGuffin because it's the thing that everybody is concerned about, and I think symbolically it represents the smoking gun, the evidence, and so that's why there's only one of them. But of course, everyone in the audience is going to say, why don't they just make a duplicate tape? So that's a weakness in the screenplay, but the performances in this movie, the way that this world of Belfast espionage and counter-espionage is viewed is very good.
You can tell that they're playing for real stakes in this picture, and that's this strong quality. Coming up next, Cyrano de Bergerac, the wildly romantic French play in a new production featuring France's greatest young man. You're looking at a scene from our next film, which is yet another version of the French romantic classic, Cyrano de Bergerac. It's a story, of course, of a brilliant man rendered tragic because of a physical flaw, the large nose that keeps him at an emotional distance from other people, including the woman he loves. This version, made in France, is a big-scale production, sort of the official version, starring Gerard Depardieu, France's greatest young actor, as the sharp-tongued Cyrano.
M'accuser d'un pareil ridicule, petit, mon nez.
Voilà! Quel énorme mon nez!
That's a classic moment in the story, and here's another, as Cyrano speaks in verse while he has a sword fight. Famed novelist Anthony Burgess did the clever English translation. These are subtitles worth reading.
La pointe, donc vous espériez me faire donc. J'ouvre la ligne, je la pousse. Tiens bien ta broche, la ridon à la fin de l'envoi. Je touche. Envoie!
Cyrano loves the beautiful Roxanne, who in turn loves another soldier. Cyrano promises to look after that soldier in combat, and when Roxanne starts to embrace Cyrano in gratitude, his unrequited love for her is too much to bear.
Il faut que je m'en aille.
Of course, his pain becomes even greater as Cyrano ends up composing successful love letters for that soldier to Roxanne. The physical scale of this picture is great. Cyrano is anchored as a real man in a real place. It doesn't seem like a phony, made-up costume drama. Depardieu can't be faulted. but I didn't have much of a response to Anne Brochet as Roxanne. So is this the definitive version of Cyrano? Well, it's a better film than the 1950 Stanley Kramer Hollywood version that won an Oscar for Jose Ferrer, and yet the story is so appealing that I must confess that I enjoyed Steve Martin's more comic version, Roxanne, from a couple of years ago, just as much as this one. Maybe it's not possible to do a bad version of Cyrano.
Maybe not, but of course the Steve Martin and Depardieu versions of this story are so different, even set in different times and places, that you could see them on a double bill and not really be aware that you were looking at exactly the same underlying material. I've seen this Cyrano twice. I saw it with a French audience at the Cannes Film Festival. I saw it again with the Chicago audience not long ago. And both times I noted the same response. A lot of the people in the audience really emotionally overcome. A lot of honking noises, blowing of noses, wiping away of tears, and a lot of people going like this and absolutely rejecting it as corny and unconvincing. And I think it has to do with whether they're basically romantic or not, because who is more romantic as a hero than Cyrano, and who is better to play him at this time and place, I think, than Depardieu. It's a really romantic and fun movie.
It certainly is. I was at a children's movie the other day when a little girl started crying at an animated chainsaw scene. Now, why do so many Hollywood movies for kids have such a dark and frightening vision? When we come back, we'll have a special report and then suggest some movies that are actually fun and even cheerful for families.
That's a key scene from Batman, one of the most popular movies in recent years among grade school kids. And what you saw there was young Bruce Wayne's parents being mugged by street criminals while the little boy looked on. These days, you have to have a pretty thick skin to be a kid at the movies. Not very long ago in this country, kids went to the neighborhood library to check out books. These days, they go to the neighborhood video store to check out movies. The books the kids checked out wouldn't have surprised anybody in those years ago. They were exciting, romantic, and filled with a sense of wonder. The movies the kids are looking at are exciting too, but with a big difference. They contain a dark and depressing vision of the world, a world of violence and despair. What is it with kids today? Why are they attracted to stories that would have scared or depressed children from earlier, gentler, more innocent generations?
Listen to me. The human world, it's a mess.
Sure, kids still watch the kinds of movies that are traditionally thought of as children's films, but their favorite heroes these days are radioactively mutated turtles who live in the sewers of New York City. Kids used to be scared that something bad might happen to Lassie. Now a lot of movies begin with the kids' parents being brutally mugged or killed, like in Batman. And the little mouse in An American Tail had his house burned down and his family broken up by Cossack troops. And even the father figure of the Ninja Turtles, a kindly old rat, remembers the murder of his ninja master. The heroes in the old days fought for truth, justice, and the American way. Now, they want revenge. The most popular and best-renting action movies among kids these days are RoboCop, about a mechanical man who wants revenge on the bad guys who made him that way. And Lethal Weapon 2, about revenge against racist drug dealers and murderers. And Total Recall with its exploding heads.
Get ready for a surprise!
And, of course, those gosh darn turtles.
God, I love being a turtle!
What I want to know is, what are these kids thinking today when they see a dark world where parents are mugged and the bad guys live in big houses and the safest place is down in the sewer?
I want to suggest an answer, which is I don't know that children are attracted to it. I don't know that they have much of a choice. I think that what's happened is this hard-edged stuff has just knocked out the stuff and kids are getting this because this is what is really offered and sold hard and very hard to them. And so they want to see it because that's what's there to see. I have 2 children of my own, as you know, young kids, and it bothers me. I see a real threat here. I also see something else. I see it's sort of a poisoning of what the movie theater can be. I know when they're older they can handle action stuff, but at this age, a tender age, you know, we're talking about under 7 and under, I want them to embrace something a little more life-affirming, and it's very, very hard to find it.
There ought to be something fun in the movies, not something that scares you and makes you cry, and even in films like Disney's The Rescuers Down Under.
It was a little intense.
I was at that screening.
Yes.
I heard your daughter crying during that one scene, and I thought, gee, this is supposed to be entertaining. Why? And then another thing that they do, of course, with some of the action pictures, is on children's television, they really push the toy products that are tied in with them. So the kids feel like they're missing the boat unless they have a RoboCop toy, and yet at the same time the movie is R-rated. It's not really made for them.
I can just tell you from first-hand experience, you take your child to a movie these days and you've got one hand ready to cover their eyes, and that's too bad.
It's too bad. Coming up next, our antidote to those dark times for family-oriented movies. We're going to be back with some suggestions of quality movies available on home video.
The family-oriented movies, Roger and I have each come up with a recent release. My pick is Crusoe, a little seen, more socially conscious version of the classic story featuring Aidan Quinn from Avalon as the shipwrecked soul. The movie was directed by Caleb Deschanel, whose film The Black Stallion is, of course, another classic nature picture.
No! Meat. Où est my
The unique spin on this production is that Robinson Crusoe is not presented as some kind of rascal adventurer, but rather as a slave trader who comes to embrace Africans only after he begins living among them.
It's a real good film, and like The Black Stallion, it shows this world of the sea and the beach and the jungle as a vast and wondrous universe instead of just some backlot set of some sort. We're really convinced that he's out there in the middle of this ocean somewhere.
And that's why this Caleb Deschanel has to be considered a real hero for parents, because he's making quality films in a way that other people are simply not doing it.
If for no other reason, he's a hero because he's making films for children that adults can like.
Yeah.
My choice for a family movie worth seeing is The Bear, a film that may seem like a strange selection in a way because it opens with a bear cub experiencing the death of its mother, and that might look like another example of the theme I was complaining about, that all kids' movies start out by making the heroes into orphans. But The Bear is a different kind of family movie, a film that accepts the realities of life but also contains lessons to be learned and a vision to be absorbed, a vision of the life of a wild animal, a bear cub growing up in the mountains far from man. It took more than a year to film The Bear on those natural locations because every scene had to be pieced together from dozens of different shots. It's not easy to turn bears into movie actors, but the result is a magnificent adventure, not a sugar-coated animal fable, but a movie that respects its subject and its audience and encourages kids to ask them tough questions afterwards. You know, a lot of children's movies are like fast food. You can hardly remember them after you've been there, but they're not terrifically good for you. The Bear encourages its viewers to really think about what they see.
It is a good film, I would say, for older children, maybe over the age of, say, 8. I think it's a really good film. And maybe the distinction is you can tell when a filmmaker loves its subject matter, his subject matter, her subject matter, and when they don't. And that is what is obviously going on in The Bear and also in Crusoe.
We'll be back in a moment to take another look at the movies we reviewed. 2
thumbs up for Misery, Rob Reiner's thoroughly enjoyable film of Stephen King's thriller about a tortured writer. Both James Caan and Kathy Bates excel. 2 more thumbs up for Hidden Agenda, a compelling thriller set in the world of Northern Ireland. Finally, 2 more thumbs up for Cyrano de Bergerac, the semi-official big-scale French version starring Gerard Depardieu. We're all thumbs.
We're thumbs on everything. But, you know, I hope that people do take a chance on Cyrano because they might not realize just how much fun it is. It's not some kind of a pickled classic to put on the shelf. It's filled with juice and life, and it's lots of fun. Before we go, we want to remind viewers about Siskel and Ebert's Holiday Video Gift Guide, our annual one-hour special survey of electronic gadgets and games, plus all kinds of movie choices that might make great holiday gifts. Check your local listings to find out when our hour-long holiday video gift guide is going to play over the next couple of weeks. And next week in our regular slot, we'll be back with The Rookie, a cop thriller starring Clint Eastwood and Charlie Sheen, and Edward Scissorhands, the new movie by Tim Burton, the man who made Batman. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.